Attention Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Lobo, and floating out in space, still in his life pod, orbiting the Earth, is my co-host and producer, Paul Sanders of Bestow TV. Paul is still floating out in space. He's been, I guess, watching a lot of TV while he's up there. We've been kind of trying to keep things interesting, trying to keep our brains activated now that the apes have taken over. The apes and the abes have taken over the planet. Paul, are you out there?
No.
You don't seem to be paying attention.
No. Oh, Phil, again? Come on, Phil, you just did this day yesterday. Aw, man.
Paul, are you watching Groundhog Day again?
I mean, that's the only thing that's available at Redbox up here. It's either that or the Hitchhiker's Guardian of the Galaxy thingamabobber that I watched like a million times before. So, just got to keep it activated.
Weren't you watching Groundhog Day yesterday?
And the day before. And the day before that. I mean, it's just like the tagline from this movie, in space. It's the same day over and over and over and over and over and over.
Until you scream, right?
Or until the groundhog sees its shadow.
Oh, gosh. Well, Paul, Groundhog Day has always been weird. Now, I am a recent transplant to Pennsylvania, but I always thought that weird. It just seems like a weird fetish, right? Where you've got these guys in funny clothes and they're sort of prodding at this poor animal in a cage until it comes out, and it's sort of witchy. They're kind of like, I don't know. I mean, they do that in the middle of the town square, right?
I mean, actually, like that in the movie is not true at all. I actually lived in Punxsutawney for about 2 years, and they load everybody up into a bus and they take you out in the middle of the woods, and you're driving forever in the middle of the woods at night in the middle of western Pennsylvania, where Jason's from, and possibly Mike Myers.
Yeah.
And when they finally get you there, they take you out to Gobbler's Knob, and you get to wait and party with what? Huh?
Gobbler's Knob? That sounds disgusting. I don't think you can say that on the air, Paul.
I didn't name it.
Well, I think it's getting bleeped, so maybe you could say it differently somehow.
All right, fine. They take you out to Nobbler's Gob, and you party with all the other people that are out there, and
somehow that works. Nobbler's Gob sounds just as disgusting to me, but for some reason that's not getting bleeped. So I guess you can go ahead and say Nobbler's Gob instead of Gobbler's Knob. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story though.
But if I keep saying Nobbler's Gob, won't the Punxsutawney Travel Board have a problem? I mean, do we make the travel board happy, or do we make our sponsors happy?
I guess we have some leverage in case the Punxsutawney Travel Board wants to become a sponsor, right? Because I think we want to make our sponsors happy that we have. So maybe if the Punxsutawney Film Board gets together with Anchor, they can start placing spots in the show, and then I guess we can bleep it the other way once that happens.
But anyway, you go out there and you party your ass off until the wee morning hours, and you like freezing your butt off because it's like in the middle of winter and there's like just one little lodge that everybody jam packs themselves into, and you just drink a lot of hot chocolate or coffee or whatever, and then they rip the groundhog out and they make it do their bidding, or however that is.
That sounds like Eyes Wide Shut. That sounds like some rich weirdos doing weird stuff out in the woods.
That explains why they were handing out all the masks for us to wear beforehand. I had a lot of questions.
All
I think you answered them.
Old guys out, with their top hats and their frock coats, prodding people in cages. I kind of feel like it's a lot like the Abes taking over. It's pretty much. I think it was the predecessor of the Abes taking over the planet. I've been trying to keep up with current events, and the things that are happening all over the world are insane. Of course, the Abe Lincolns have been rounding everyone up. They've been putting them in cages. Honestly, it's a lot exactly like it's pretty much the same as it was with the apes when they were taking over, except now it's with Abes. It's like a hollow imitation of all the same scenarios. Instead of rounding them up in cages and giving them lobotomies, they're now giving them lobotomies, so that's the only difference.
And how's that differ? I mean, what's a lobotomy? How's that differ?
Oh, they use an axe. Oh. But other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. So the whole thing just seems like, a rip-off of a rip-off. And I'm tired of having to wear a beard everywhere. They've got this thing now where they're making everyone wear beards. My beard just makes my glasses fog up, and I always forget to wear my beard when I go into the store, and everybody freaks out. And it's just like the whole thing is just a big pain in the keister. I mean, I look silly because I've got like my facial hair and my beard. So, I don't really look like an Abe Lincoln at all. Although you already have a bushy beard up there, don't you, Paul?
I want to be experience this. It sucks that I'm lost in space because I have the lobotomy, obviously, and I have the beard. So, I mean, I just fit right in. I mean, I'd just be a productive member of society.
Well, they probably make you shave the mustache off, though, so you look more Abe-like.
Oh, then screw that.
But Paul, what happened to Aaron is that, he doesn't have the mustache. Well, actually, he does have a mustache, but it doesn't match his beard. So he looks like an Amish guy. And then he just got abducted, and he's been into forced labor. And they've been making him raise barns out in Amish country, and we haven't seen him for weeks. So we're hoping to get him back. He will extract him from the Amish community and get him back here working on the channel. But speaking of ripoffs, this whole thing just feels like a hollow ripoff of the Planet of the Apes, only with Abes, and I kind of feel like it's a good segue into a topic. What do you think, Paul?
Oh my, it sounds like this might be a good topic for an episode, he said on his own volition.
Wow, of course. What a great idea. Why don't we make that the topic of this week's episode?
I'm glad that brain slug kicked in at that last minute. Itchy as hell going in the ear, but man, the benefits?
Oh, yes, the benefits can't be measured. We could talk about, is RoboCop a ripoff? Is Aliens a ripoff? Those are the kinds of things we could talk about. The Matrix. What's the difference between a ripoff and an influence or an inspiration?
Homage.
An homage. I mean, art is nothing without its influences, and it wasn't like Oscar Wilde or I forgot who said it, but it was like the secret to good writing is knowing who to plagiarize.
Oh, that was Mr. Roper, wasn't it?
No, I think it was Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island, perhaps, or
which one came first?
Maybe it was Three's Company ripping off Fantasy Island, or was Fantasy Island ripping off Three's Company?
Or maybe they were.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe they're both ripping off somebody else. I don't know. I got to rip off this beard, so I'm going to try to detach this beard during the break, and we'll be back with another ripoff right after this.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Now this second day of February 2nd, 2020, 02/02/2020, the 134th annual trek of the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club. Punxsutawney Phil, the seer of seers, prognosticator of all prognosticators, was awakened from his burrow to the cheers of thousands upon thousands of his faithful followers from around the world. In Groundhogese, Phil directed the inner circle to his prediction scroll, which reads, "It's a Phil fantastic day in these beautiful woods, thousands and thousands in the Knob neighborhood. You faithful followers are the best, it's true. Who wouldn't want neighbors just like you? Now my forecast on a day that's a palindrome will cause some to cheer and some to moan. So do I hope you think it's neighborly, for there is no shadow of me. Spring will be early, it's a certainty."
Nuts.
In space, no one can hear you get ripped off. That's our topic, is rip-offs. Ripping off, that always sounds like it's always like an argument ender. Oh, that's a rip-off, right? That's what people say. But I kind of feel like artistic theft is like the norm in Hollywood, right? I mean, when you walk out of that office after you've done your pitch, the first phone call they make is, how do we take this away from this guy and do this same idea without having to give that guy any money? Alien, which was a very well-written, well-executed film, a breakthrough science fiction film, kind of a lot of concepts that are sort of cyberpunk that got carried forward into other movies. And even that movie, which is an original movie, probably has its origins in previous movies, specifically two films that people claim Alien borrowed from, is It, the Terror from Beyond Space.
Where there's the one with the clown?
No.
Is that like a space? Where a space
I'll float
space
up here
sewer
in space,
grate?
Georgie.
Hey, Georgie. Hey, Georgie, I'm the genie. Ha
Yeah, I'm the genie. I mean, I guess could be a prequel since he's a space monster and his name's It. It could be Stephen King could have been ripping off that It also. But there is a space monster on board a rocket, and the space monster is moving through the various levels of the rocket and killing all the astronauts one by one. So in that regard, that's a similar plot device, right? Where you've got a spaceship that's contaminated by an alien and it's killing all the astronauts one by one in a horror film. The other movie is that it's always compared to Alien, the film Alien. This is 1979, right? 79 is Alien.
Somewhere around there.
Another film is from the 60s. It, for the Terror from Beyond Space, was from the 50s, I believe. And Planet of the Vampires is from the 60s. And Planet of the Vampires is an Italian horror movie in space where they land on a derelict, dead planet, and there are space vampires there. And so that and if you think about how the alien functions, it's a very vampiric kind of thing. It's a gothic tale in space where these creatures are feeding on us and breeding with us, right?
The movie Species, that's what we're talking about, right?
No, we're not talking about Species, Paul. That's another knockoff of Alien. We're talking about Alien. And boy, in the 80s, you couldn't throw a stick or throw a face hugger or throw a KY jelly without hitting
on your Nobbler's gob.
A Nobbler's gob.
You throw some Nobbler's gob. It hit something.
Gobbler's knob, Nobbler's gob. Yeah, if you don't want to throw any of that around, but if you do, don't get it on you. In the 80s, there were a lot of knockoffs of Alien because Alien was incredibly popular. It was a blockbuster horror film special effects film. And 20th Century Fox was a little slow to follow it up.
It seems like a theme with them with that series.
All of those movies,
a
little too late, too little, too late in a lot of cases.
I mean, skip to the third one, and the third one is so drastically different than what the scripts were for what they had proposed. But they took forever to do that.
Yeah, and I think they did, and at first they promised a Earth war. They made you kind of think, on Earth everyone can hear you scream. That was the original trailer for the third Alien.
Right.
They never even got to Earth, so I feel like that they didn't want to pay Dark Horse Comics for that.
It's somewhere along the way,
Alien Earth war or something.
And somewhere along the way, we lost Hicks because he was supposed to be a big part of that too.
Yeah. It's a shame, but so we go to Alien and Alien knockoffs. When they made the sequel to Alien, by the time they made the sequel to Alien, there had been a lot of knockoffs, Creature and Parasite, and on. And Galaxy of Terror is one that actually has an uncredited direction, and I think that broke on Cinema Insomnia first when I interviewed Sid Haig. That James Cameron, who was the director of the sequel to Aliens, they had made that movie, Galaxy of Terror. I think he was only credited as a production designer or cinematographer, but I think he actually did a lot of second unit directing.
Second unit, according to the site.
And according to Sid Haig, shot a lot more than just second unit on that movie. But anyhow, they ended up hiring this guy who did a knockoff of Alien to do a legitimate sequel to Alien. And I think he just took a lot of the ideas from Galaxy of Terror, which is, you've got the legitimate sequel taking ideas from the ripoff, right?
So you got like the Walmart brand, and then you got the dollar store brand, and then you get the Target version of the dollar store version?
Yes. The Target version is copying the dollar store version.
Is that like getting, was it Robert Kopp?
Yeah, Robert Kopp. Rupert Kopp is another one. But I think that that's kind of interesting. But then you've got another thing that's sort of being paralleled is because James Cameron has kind of come forward with admitting that he took a lot of ideas from the novel Starship Troopers, Heinlein's novel Starship Troopers for Alien. The Space Marines and all of that came from that. So much so that when we finally got to Starship Troopers, it sort of felt like, oh, okay, well, we've seen this before. But James Cameron has actually taken some fire for ripping off literary sources before, right? We have the Terminator movie has a lot of influences from other things in it. I mean, it already was just Halloween with a cyborg, right? I mean, it basically is just Michael Myers as a cyborg. But on top of that, the whole premise of the guy coming back from the future and he's got a robotic hand and all that. There's a Harlan Ellison story called Demon with a Glass Hand, which I believe was either an Outer Limits or a Twilight Zone story as well. But that was so, at least legally, was determined to be directly lifted from Demon. The story of Terminator was directly lifted from Demon with a Glass Hand. And this is 1984, so this would be somewhere in between when Alien came out and when Aliens came out.
And I also made the correlation of, I don't know if you ever saw the 1973 version of Westworld, but if you ever noticed that you get the Yul Brynner's POV, and it's very much the Terminator's POV. So he may have been ripping off a little bit more than the book.
Oh, wow.
I mean, nobody's ever said anything. I don't see anything linking it. It might just be an observation thing, but it's very, very, very similar in design.
Michael Crichton kind of is one of those forefathers of cyberpunk with his stories too. You know, I wonder if that even carried over into $6 Million Man with the fembots and Maskatron and the robots in that series, like their point of view, like what's the earliest version of that like robot view of everything, where you're seeing like the robot's point of view, the POV. Everything is sort of distorted or digitized or posterized in some way. Usually it's red, right? Usually the robot's view is red. I can think of
like numbers and data running in then one corner, maybe some wording.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a common trope, right? Predator kind of has a similar. We're seeing his point of view in this weird technological version of his view. And then there's a Doctor Who. There's a Doctor Who, the first Tom Baker Doctor Who, where the robot is trying to take over Unit, and I think it's just called Robot. But it's just, you keep seeing this red computerized point of view of the robot. It would be interesting to look at that historically, like is where did that start, and were they all aware of each other? Like, how do we know how a robot sees something? Especially in those days when we didn't really have real robots who could see anything.
Right. I mean, that might not even be James Cameron influenced directly. That could be just somebody in the special effects department. They're trying to homage, or, hey, we just have this outline that already exists. Or I mean, who owns Westworld to begin with?
What studio you mean?
Yeah, it may be just like a similar studio where they just have access to similar.
Or it's like, okay, well, or it's the type of thing where it's so strong in the culture, like, okay, this is just how robots see stuff, and it just makes sense to everybody that's what that looks like, and so everyone just agrees to just template it and do it the same way.
I mean, I just kind of see it as this. It's easier because we already own this, so we don't have to make up something new. So we'll just reuse this. It's kind of like the PKE meter of Ghostbusters appearing in other films. I can't think of the other film off the top of my head, but it shows up elsewhere several times.
Oh yeah,
where they recycle props a lot of times. Star Wars props get recycled a lot too, because it's just easier just to pull it from the props department and just reuse it versus building something scratch. So it could be a similar aspect in the visual effects realm.
Well, a lot of people don't realize how expensive LEDs and things were in the late 70s and early 80s. If you had fiber optic lights or LEDs inside of a prop, that was a multi-$1,000 prop that you usually had. So you would rent it. They had their prop houses that did nothing but rent sci-fi props. So if you watch a lot of 80s, 70s, and 80s sci-fi in TV shows and lower budget films especially, you just see those same props over and over again, and they might even be released by different studios or have different art departments, but they just went down to the corner and picked up a bunch of stuff from the sci-fi prop shop and rented a few things out to fill out that room full of controls or whatever.
Just a real quick pop in. The PK meter appeared in, this is according to a quick look, they appeared in films like They Live, Suburban Commando, and the second season of Knight Rider.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Moving on.
All right. So They Live, Suburban Commando, and the second season of Knight Rider all have the PKE monitor from Ghostbusters.
Correct.
I always think of that thing in Airplane 2 with the two red lights going back and forth. And it goes, well, what does that machine do? Oh, yeah, it just has two red lights that go back and forth. That is in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, and I think it's also in the a couple of those Glenn Larson shows. I've seen that prop in the background a few times. Going back to Terminator, when I was a kid, I had a poster of the Terminator, and it had added to the poster, like you could feel it. They just added a sticker in the credits at the bottom of the poster that said based on a story by Harlan Ellison. And I remember there were videotapes and other physical items related to the movie where this sticker had to be added to. And they had the same fonts and it was the same color. So they tried to make it look like it was already printed on there, but it certainly wasn't. And so retroactively going forward, that doesn't even make any sense. going forward, they had to add Harlan Ellison's name to the Terminator movies. So it usually says it's based on a story by Harlan Ellison. So, even though James Cameron is an auteur and brilliant and has a lot of great ideas, and I'm not saying that he did anything wrong, but he certainly got called to task for liberally taking someone else's story idea. And so we have that movie becomes Terminator, which we know. Then we go to Starship Troopers, the book. He took some ideas from Starship Troopers, the book, into the Aliens movie. So much so that when we see Starship Troopers, we feel like we've seen it all before, right?
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit at length about Starship Troopers after the break. Would you like to know more?
Hey, Mr. Lobo.
Oh, Paul, what's up?
I have a question here about this memo that I got from you. It says that Bestow TV now needs a commercial.
Oh, whoever wrote that should get fired, I think.
I'm not quite sure what to put into said commercial.
For Bestow TV, I mean, you just talk about your channel.
Like creative continuity and its sister show, bonus content?
Right, all the convention culture and the interviews with celebrities and all that stuff, sure.
Well, I guess I could also mention the cosplay montages, costumes.
Costumes, right. Astonishing cosplay montage set to an epic soundtrack.
Or I guess there's convention rewind, too.
Those are great. We've run those on OSI 74.
So I guess that's all I need, so I guess all I have to...
Are you sure? Because I think there's one other show that you produced for a Bestow.
I don't know what you're talking about.
With Mr. Lobo.
What
that we do together, the thing that we do. Remember all those videos we did?
Oh, like Mr. Lobo does.
Yes, Mr. Lobo does, of course.
That's awesome. I'm going to get right on this. I'm going to write up the script.
Hey, wait, Paul. You forgot to tell him to go to bestow.tv. Idiot.
You're listening. What is that? What is that noise?
Yeah, it's coming across the mics. I can hear it. What is that?
All right. Okay. I'm looking out the window. Somebody's car alarm is going off and going off.
Oh wait, wait. My keys are stuck in the vent here. Let me give it a shot.
Is that your car, Paul?
Apparently I don't remember leaving it at your house, but I guess I did.
Did you just turn off your car alarm from space?
I did.
That's a heck of a range you got there on your key fob, yes. Paul. I mean, I mine is like in the driveway, and I have to like walk right up next to my car and press the button like 20 times before I can get the doors to unlock. And you can turn your car alarm off from space.
It's space magic.
Now, why did you leave your car parked in our neighborhood?
I don't remember leaving my car parked there. I mean, is it all right? Is everything?
Well, I think the apes or the Abes have gotten to it because it's up on blocks. So
it was up on blocks when I left. I mean, I do that on purpose. That's the safety feature along with the alarm.
I guess it would be up on Lincoln Logs if it was the Abes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Instead, it's the damn dirty apes.
up on bananas.
Up on bananas.
So we were talking about, before we were so rudely interrupted by your car, Paul, we were talking about Starship Troopers. Now, I enjoyed that film when it came out, but I went to go see it not on the strength of the novel Starship Troopers, but on the strength of the film RoboCop. I enjoyed Paul Verhoeven's direction on RoboCop, and I felt that it was darkly funny and satirical. And if you watch Starship Troopers, that is not a serious movie. Like, I don't understand people who come away from Starship Troopers thinking that they're supposed to like any of those characters in that movie. I was
exposed differently because that was probably right around when I first started going to Comic-Cons, and one of the people that we went to go to a panel to at a local show was actually one of the animators, and we got to see advanced animatronics of the bugs and everything from that movie.
Interesting.
We got to see that long before the trailers were even released or anything. We got to see some test footage.
Now, were you familiar with the book Starship Troopers or anything like that?
No, never heard of it. I think after I saw the movie, I had discovered that I had the books because it was one of those things where you had like a book of the month club or whatever, and they would send you random books. And I noticed because I had like different Star Wars books and sci-fi books and stuff because they sent you stuff based off your interest. And I had the book, but I never read it or never really had much interest in reading it. And I thought it was funnily dark.
Funnily dark. Funnily, it was poured through a funnel. The darkness was poured through a funnel onto the movie. I thought it's interesting too because it made me want to read the book, but then I had heard that the book was used as it's almost required reading for people who are in the Marines or in the military. It is not tongue in cheek at all. It is a very serious kind of pro. I don't want to say pro-war, but certainly not anti-war in the way that Verhoeven's stuff is very anti-violence, and he's very critical of American culture, so that kind of comes across more in RoboCop, but I think in Starship Troopers, especially since the book had the reputation of being very rah-rah, I think that it definitely shot its intended audience in the face. I don't know if the investors were really the investors that wanted to sell a bunch of toys and have a franchise were very happy with that interpretation of Starship Troopers as a comedy, because I don't think that the fans of that got the comedy.
No, and in comparison to what they were ripped off originally with Aliens, is like you walk away liking Hicks and to degrees some of the other Colonial Marines versus this one where you hate every single one of them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, for the exception of probably Dizzy, like they're not likable characters.
No, they're not likable characters. And you're right, Paul, like in Aliens, like the Space Marines are very, you're on their side, and for a very kind of, I don't want to say pro-violence per se, but they definitely, there's a whole scene with two characters caressing a gun together, and they solve the whole problem of the aliens strictly with violence. They nuke the site from orbit. Spoilers, right? I took your line there, Paul.
Yeah,
you
sorry.
Can go ahead and say spoilers if you want.
Now it's pointless now. Now I just feel like...
All right. Okay.
Spoilers.
You feel better?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. So they nuke the site from orbit, and then they solve the whole problem with violence. We like the Space Marines. It kind of shows that the value of sometime military action is necessary to take care of a problem. So that it is totally coming from a totally different direction in Aliens, but oddly enough, more true to the source material that they were just ripping off than the official movie Starship Troopers. Now, I didn't see the sequels. They had 25 direct-to-video?
Something like that. A few of them on Porno Cube, beamed directly into your head.
And then they had an animated Starship Troopers.
Couple of them,
series,
because there's some of the newer one are computer animated, and they tried to get as many of the original actors as they could. So there's a little bit closer tied to the first movie than some of the live action sequels. Because you get, was it Casper Van Dien is back as Sergeant Pepper.
Sergeant Pepper. Now, who was Jake Busey was in there too, right? Did he come back and do a voice?
I think so. I think he was Sergeant Mountain Dew. I might be getting my movies crossed, but
you might be. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Sergeant's 2-in-1 flea collar.
Sergeant Hearts.
Yes. But whatever, Major Pain, right? But I think it is interesting because how that movie Starship Troopers was an official adaptation that was done in a tongue-in-cheek way, And then with Verhoeven's movie RoboCop, it's almost the opposite. It's like an unofficial adaptation of a couple of things done in a tongue-in-cheek way, but then successful. The RoboCop really took a lot from the comic book Judge Dredd, which was very popular in the 70s and 80s. And the comic book was satirical and was darkly funny, or funnily dark, as Paul would say. And then also, you had told me, Paul, about they saw a poster for another movie that made them pitch.
Yeah, like the rumor is that they saw the poster for Blade Runner, and were inspired about cops that were hunting robots. So maybe it's just robots being cops.
Interesting. So they just turned it inside out. We have now, instead of having a cop hunting robots, we got a robot hunting criminals as a cop. So
you get a little bit of peanut with your chocolate and a little bit of chocolate with your violence.
Mm-hmm. You get a little knob in your gob, the gob on your knob.
You got your little bit of your gobstopper.
Yeah. And in that case, I think, other than the fact that film was criticized for being sort of fascist, which is funny because, again, this is Paul Verhoeven, who is very critical of that sort of thing and has very left leanings. And the reason his movies are so violent is not because he loves violence, it's because he despises violence and he doesn't want to romanticize it. So he is trying to kind of make it over the top on purpose to make it unpleasant. So whereas in a lot of movies that are sort of action movies, the violence is very antiseptic. It's a bunch of machine guns going off and people falling down, but it's not you don't see someone dragging themselves screaming as they're slowly dying or something, or, getting their hand pulverized. So RoboCop takes a lot from the cynicism and the humor and also the helmeted space cop. I mean, basically a future cop, right? I mean, Judge Dredd is the story of a futuristic cop who is judge, jury, and executioner, has a helmet, says I'm the law, right? A lot of things are very similar. And when they finally made similar to Starship Troopers, when they finally made an official Judge Dredd movie, Judge Dredd was sort of thought of as, oh, this is just RoboCop. We've already seen this. In the cinematic world, in the cinematic audience saw it as a ripoff, even though the source material was the original source material. We see this a lot.
They were inspired by that comic. I can't. I don't know if we can. It's not anything that's verifiable, but didn't the writers of Judge Dredd sue RoboCop at some point?
I'm not sure if that's fair. I don't know if they did or not. I think it was it might have gotten thrown out because it's just ultimately it's the same idea. They didn't take any names or characters or specific storylines. So perhaps it was one of those things that got thrown out. But I think it's kind of interesting because, like when Jaws came out, I sort of feel like everyone got sued for the next 10 years who did any movie with a shark. So I think it depends on how good your lawyers are in that particular case.
And that's why you make your main villain, instead of a shark, you make it a whale.
Which was the case with Orca, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I think with Judge Dredd also, and I can't verify this, but I think the original Mad Max movie seems very influenced by Judge Dredd also, where you have a dystopian future with everything kind of decaying and falling apart, and these kind of armored cops that are sort of driving around, dealing with these sort of punks, basically, which is again is vaguely Judge Dredd, but I do feel like it's an influence. When I watch the first Mad Max, I think about Judge Dredd
because they're kind of basically taking the law in their own hands.
Yeah,
isn't it like the basically judges and everything, like the whole judicial system is kind of dead in the original Mad Max.
Yeah, everything's sort of fallen apart. And I think they even call it the Hall of Justice, where all the cops hang out in the first Mad Max.
In the Hall of Justice.
Meanwhile, in the Hall of Justice. So Super Friends is also very inspired by Judge Dredd. Oh, God. But, RoboCop is another one, too, like Starship Troopers, where the first movie, and I guess the second movie, too, were kind of darkly satirical. But then I guess, they want to make money. They want to have a franchise. They're not trying to make some sort of point about violence or jingoism or, propaganda or, making fun of action movies or satirizing pop culture. I mean, those aren't the things that people who invest in movies are really interested in. They're interested in moving toys and selling tickets. So, the RoboCop series, much like the Starship Troopers series, the later movie, which is what the RoboCop 3 was, very kind of kid friendly and had like cyber ninjas and all that stuff. And then they did a cartoon series, and they did a Canadian TV series, which I think was called Prime Directives.
Right. Now, did the cyber ninjas, is that what ended up as the ghosts in the Matrix? Is that?
I saw some cyber ninjas today. I think there are some glitches in the Matrix happening. I keep seeing these weird things. I've been seeing fembots and these sort of geisha bots.
The same cat walk through the room the same direction multiple times. Deja vu.
You can say that again.
Deja vu.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, just like in space, just the same stuff just keeps happening over and over and over and over again.
That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over.
How could that thing have gotten aboard? And why? Just to kill us?
There's the usual reason an intelligent creature kills.
It's hungry? What makes you so certain it's intelligent, Colonel? Not just an animal.
Can't open the door to see compartment.
And there's candy and fries and all sorts of surprises down here. And balloons, too. All colors.
Do they float?
Oh, yes. They float, Georgie. They float.
In the silent void of outer space, puny man matches his cunning against a monster from Mars running rampant, howling for all the flesh and blood on Earth.
What's the matter? One balloon, not enough.
Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
You're not dreaming. What? Paul, are you hearing that noise?
What are you talking about?
Oh my God, Paul, do you realize that your car alarm is going off? Your car is still parked out in front of the house. Will you please, can you try your key fob? Maybe you can turn that off.
Again? Didn't I just do this a second ago?
Paul, your car alarm hasn't gone off since you've been off-world. This is the first time. Could you please just try to turn it off if you can?
What do you mean?
I don't want to have to go outside and break into your car.
What do you mean first time? Hold on. How many cats have you seen walk across the room?
Well, both Ripley's our cat, right? Yeah. So we've got two Ripleys, I guess. I have two cats named Ripley.
What happened to Garbage Cat?
I don't have a cat named Garbage Cat.
Right.
I have two cats named Ripley.
All right, hold on a second. I think I know what's going on. Give me a second.
Where are you going, Paul?
Okay, I just time traveled. So I found a glitch in the Matrix that I went back a couple of episodes and I fixed the misinformation we handed out in one of the episodes. I went back and I fixed it, so everything should be fine. How many cats do we have and what are they called?
I have Garbage Cat. That's the only cat that I have. Oh, Aaron has Stray, but other than that, we have only one cat.
I think it's all right. I think we nailed it.
Okay. Well, now Paul, is it because did you sling your life pod around the sun to fix something in the past? Is that what you're doing up there?
No, I have a big shiny red button that says Futuari. I think it's a little bit misspelled, but I just hit the button.
Technology, man. Technology is an interesting thing because it's such a common theme of so many franchises. Technology run rampant. I mean, the cyberpunk thing, we've kind of hit on the origins of cyberpunk or future noir with films like Westworld and Terminator, and even Alien has those aspects. And then, of course, Ridley Scott, who directed Alien, went on to make Blade Runner, which I think is enormously influential I think every science fiction movie after, certainly Terminator was influenced by Blade Runner, but I think every science fiction movie after Blade Runner, even though it wasn't a financial success, stylistically, every futuristic city is inspired by Blade Runner.
Now, what about Neo Tokyo, as in say like Ghost in the Shell?
Neo Tokyo, I think Neo Tokyo is in the Akira, right? Is it also Neo Tokyo in Ghost in the Shell?
I believe it's the same. I think that the idea of Neo Tokyo carries over across a lot of the manga and stuff. Or Mega Tokyo. Some have Mega Tokyo as well. Mega Tokyo,
Neo Tokyo, and I think in Buck Rogers they had New Chicago, and then in Blade Runner it's technically Los Angeles, but it feels like Hong Kong. There's that whole East-West thing all combining.
Now, is that anywhere near San Francisco?
San Francisco? Where's that?
Big Hero 6.
Oh, Dylan just tells me that's Big Hero 6.
Oh.
Is that right?
Sure.
Did you have a joke that got stepped in? Do you need to go back in the past and fix that?
No, it's fine. Whatever. We'll deal with whatever future comes out of this mess.
Okay, so we've got the mega cities. The Mega City 1 from not RoboCop.
The other knockoff.
Judge Dredd has Mega City 1. But a lot of this sort of rampant future. Ghost in the Shell took a lot from Akira and Blade Runner. Now, Akira and Blade Runner. Now, was Akira influenced by Blade Runner? When did Akira come out? Because Akira came out in '88, right? The movie came out in '88, but it goes back further than that.
The original run of the comic came out in '82.
Okay, which is the same as Blade Runner. So they might have known about each other, but probably they didn't influence each other too much at the time, right?
Right.
At least not at the beginning. Now I know that Ridley Scott, he saw the movie Heavy Metal, and even though they were trying to adapt Do Androids Dream of Electronic Sheep, which was a book written in the 70s by Philip K. Dick.
Andy Dick?
But not Andy Dick, no. That was the Android version of Philip K. Dick. When they were making the movie, originally it was going to be a lot more cerebral and wasn't going to focus as much on the outside world. But when Ridley Scott saw the depiction of the future in the animated version of Heavy Metal, or also the magazine Heavy Metal, which was from magazine Heavy Metal, I think that when he saw that, I was like, okay, this is what this movie has to be like. So maybe the culprit is the magazine Heavy Metal, and the movie, maybe both Akira and Blade Runner are drawing from the Hairy Canyon segment of Heavy Metal and the Mobius, the cities that are depicted by Mobius in the magazine Heavy Metal. What do you think?
Mobius, isn't that the guy that offers you the red pill and the blue pill?
It's if you could take the new issue or the back issue. The back issue will take you backwards. The new issue will show you how far the rabbit hole goes. No, Mobius. Oh God, I'm so confused. Mobius is an illustrator who is one of the founders of Heavy Metal, and the Morpheus is from the Matrix, which borrowed liberally from Ghost in the Shell, which borrowed liberally from Blade Runner, which borrowed liberally from heavy metal. So the Matrix, I think their pitch to their investors was just the animated version of Ghost in the Shell, where they just literally presented the animated movie Ghost in the Shell and said, we want to make a movie like this only for America and live action. And they did, right? And then we finally get Ghost in the Shell movie. And it pretty much, everybody feels like it's taking from the Matrix, right?
But in reality, it's actually taking from itself. So the Matrix is the ripoff of Ghost in the Shell, and Ghost in the Shell is not a Matrix of the ripoff of the movie with the film and the star in it.
Right, and it's kind of the same thing with RoboCop as Judge Dredd, or Aliens as Starship Troopers, where by the time we see the official adaptation, we kind of feel like we've already seen it, right? And that movie got a lot of criticism.
Has it gotten as much as like The Matrix? How much? Matrix got a lot of shit, especially the sequels.
Oh boy, yeah. I checked out the second Matrix. I didn't even see what it was. I don't know. I felt like at the end of the second was like, please deposit $8 for next 2 hours of this movie. I mean, I didn't feel like the second one was satisfying enough to dive into that third one, and I never did. What's the third one like? Reloaded, or right? That's the third one.
Something like Rebooted.
Oh,
Revolutions. Because originally
Reloaded was the second one.
I think Reloaded was the video game that was supplemental.
Oh, well, what's the second one?
Shitty sequel.
Shitty, yes, that's right.
I mean, the problem is that those movies, that was supposed to be like a 9-movie series, and the execs were like, no, you got to dial it back. So you get 9 movies across 2 sequels, and that's kind of problematic. And then you have the video game that is actually canon to the whole thing, and if you don't play the video game, you don't necessarily get all the references. They do reference each other.
Interesting. Yeah, because really when I saw the second one, it was like 10 million more Agent Smiths and 10 million more Agent Smiths and 10 million more Agent Smiths and 10 million more Agent Smiths. And it was sort of like, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is dull. This is boring. It kind of like transcended. Like once you create a baseline, once you have so much of the same thing happening, it loses its spectacle and just becomes boring, at least for me. It just becomes a baseline.
And I think like just the story kind of starts to fall flat because you're just so confused by what's going on. Again, they're compacting so much information into 2 movies that were supposed to be over several, that it just kind of you get information overload and kind of sort of check out after a while.
Yeah, I didn't see the third one, but don't they just make a deal with the bad guys at the end and just
basically? That's it. I mean, basically, everything that happens in the Matrix kind of always it's the same thing that happens over and over again, and then they just reinsert Neo, and they just go through the whole thing over and over again. But I think the thing was that Neo made a different decision in the third one than how he did in the past. And then they had to negotiate, and that whole thing where they had to have the trade war, and they had to do the deals with the financing and the tax laws and all that stuff that does really well in movies. So let's put this in the movie.
Yeah, like the Trade Federation in the prequels. That was probably one of the high points of that as well.
In the Matrix prequel, and there's going to be another Matrix movie out anyway. So
wait, it's coming out the same time as there's like 3 movies with Keanu Reeves, like all coming out at the same time, right? There's John Wick
4.
John Wick 4? Okay, John Wick 4, and then Bill and Ted 3 and
Matrix
4. They should just run them all in the same theater at the same time and just have them come out as a triple feature. Then they're not competing with each other.
Yeah, Matrix 4 and John Wick 4 are supposed to be dropping on the exact same day. And the irony of it is that John Wick, the director of John Wick, is Keanu Reeves' stunt double in the Matrix movies, in the original Matrix movies.
This feels like another glitch in the Matrix, Paul. Seriously. So that's kind of, I guess, a thing that happens in the Ghost in the Shell is this sort of these glitches where you think your reality is in question because things are not happening the way they're supposed to. And I kind of feel like we've experienced that quite a bit tonight. We're going to try and get everything fixed for next week. Thank you for listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast. I'm getting something over the telescreen here. This is some breaking news. It looks like the apes and the abes have put their differences aside and are developing breakthrough technologies to create a new, enhanced reality for all of us to live in? What could that mean, Paul?
I don't care. I'm not shaving my beard.
Fine. Well, you can have mine too. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights of Insomnia. I guess we'll be seeing you in the not too distant future.
You have been listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast, or should we say pODDcast.
pODDcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Dead House Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo, MisterLobo. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/mr.lobo, or on Twitter at Mr. Lobo, MisterLobo.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as Bestow TV, at Bestow.tv, on YouTube /Bestow TV, on Twitter at Bestow Prod, PROD, and on Facebook, Bestow TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/Sleepless Knights podcast.
That's
patreon.com/Sleepless Knights podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Knights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.